I do believe and I do hope that both sides do not want the war. I think the current atmospherics are not at all positive, and they are still going on a downward spiral. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's experience has been to let a younger leadership team step up and take responsibility. Hold the steering wheel, put your hand on the throttle, and actually feel that machine, that system. You can't learn how to drive by sitting next to the driver. I think the situation between Russia and Ukraine is totally different from the situation with regard to Taiwan. Ukraine is recognized as an independent country by the members of the United Nations. It's a member of the UN, and all the principles with regard to the UN Charter and so on apply to Ukraine, its sanctity of its borders, territorial integrity, the non-use of force, and so on. The situation with regard to Taiwan is different. I think countries in the UN, member countries, recognize China as a member of the UN, and that Taiwan is a part of China. And that, I think, has been the settled position in the UN for many, many years, since 1971, when China took the seat. But if you ask me what is the most important lesson to learn from the Russia-Ukraine conflict and how that applies to Taiwan, is how did we end up in a situation where we have a war right in the middle of Europe? What were the steps? What were the circumstances that led to this situation where you have this outbreak of this terrible war in the middle of Europe? And I think those are the most important lessons to read across from Russia-Ukraine to the Taiwan situation. I do believe and I do hope that both sides do not want the war. I think the current atmospherics are not at all positive, and they are still going on a downward spiral. There are some positive signs. Both sides have indicated that, well, that the two presidents may meet. I think that's positive. I should add that although all three parties, China, Taiwan, and the US, say that they have not changed their position, that's what they say. But actually the position has shifted for all three of them. And the previous position, had brought us peace for the last 50, 70 years across the straits. And the shift in positions of all three brings a new level of uncertainty. And if we can at least agree, if nothing else, that both sides don't want a war, that I think is already quite a good beginning. And then to see, well, okay, then if that's the case, then how do we avoid one? What are the areas in which we can work together at least and get on a positive trajectory? And there are many things that I think the US and China need to work on. I mean, climate change is an obvious one. We try to play our role. I mean, we were involved in trying to bring the two sides of the straits together in the Wangkou talks, 1993, the 1992 consensus. We encouraged both sides with the Santong and the Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement. And we hosted the historic meeting, the CMA meeting, when they called each other very politely Mr. C and Mr. Ma, here in Singapore. So we have tried to see what we can do to bridge the differences across the straits and to bring both sides closer together. We have said that we don't choose sides, but people sometimes misunderstand that by not choosing sides, we don't have a view. That's not true. We have a view. We choose principles, but we don't, on any particular issue, we choose principles. And so the Russia-Ukraine war is one example where we acted on principle, not because we chose one side or another side. And sometimes when we choose a principle and we act in that way, people get annoyed with us, or people praise us because they think that we are either against them or we are their best buds. But neither is true in the case of Singapore. It's because we choose principles. And I think that by choosing principles, then we become consistent and we become reliable. I can see that my colleagues have their hearts in the right place, and that's what they want to do. So that's very important. But they also have the ability and the capability. And you can see that, and increasingly so, over the last few years. COVID, I think, is a very good example where you are thrown into a crisis, you have to make decisions, difficult decisions in the face of uncertainty. You have to explain that to a public which is frightened, confused, and wanting guidance and leadership. And I think they have succeeded in doing that quite well. And if you ask me, they are up to the task. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's experience has been to let a younger leadership team step up and take responsibility. Hold the steering wheel, put your hand on the throttle, and actually feel that machine, that system. You can't learn how to drive by sitting next to the driver. You actually have to sit in the driving seat and drive, and you know what it feels like. And if you have somebody sitting next to you who can sort of not be a backseat driver, but be there and available for you to ask questions or to bounce ideas off, then you are a very fortunate person. I'm very fortunate because I have Prof. Jayakumar, and I talk to him frequently, get ideas from him and so on. And he's a wonderful resource and very generous with his sharing. And I think that if we are able to maintain this kind of system in the future, then we will be able to maintain the good governance that we have.